Next section is the health and well-being section. This is one I'll sort of point out. On the right you can sort of see the pie chart, and that's sort of showing how many of the credits that we took. Within this one there's 13 credits, but if you look at the weighting of the credits, they're 1.15%, which means that overall that's worth quite a lot. This is 15% of the entire BREEAM score is based on this section. So you might be quick to go, it's only 2 credits for having the separation between your ducts, but 2 credits is actually 2.3 credits. So things like that, they balance, whereas there's other sections that we'll go through where the weighting's only 0.6 for a credit, and you can spend a lot more money on them. It's getting that into realisation. This particular section is really heavy between the architect and the M&E, and it's not always the M&E designer can do this and say that. There has to be a conversation. It's the one section where it's worth spending a week ironing out the credits, and because a lot of the credits are crucial to the building form, so it might be, like the one we touched on, the separation. Once it's gone to planning, it can be very difficult to move where your louvers are going to be, which means if you miss the boat on that because the M&E designer and the architect didn't talk about where it was going to go, it's too late. That's what I'm sort of touching on there. This section includes, for acoustic survey, that's the external one. Again, with BREEAM, most people go, BATs and acoustic surveys, that's all I seem to waste my money on it whenever you speak to anyone. The acoustic survey is worth 2.3% of your overall score, but it's worth weighing up what the cost of sort of £500 to £800 for an external survey, weighing that up, is that cost-effective way of spending when you compare it to other things. It's always putting a cost for what these are going to be as you're going along. Energy, this is the biggest section of them all. There's 24 credits, but again, they're not quite worth 1% each, so I think it's worth 19% of the overall score. But this is the one where there's more mandatory credits in this section than anywhere else, and this is the sort of make or break of any BREEAM generally. What the philosophy on this one was, for all the buildings, so all 10 on the site, we said we were going to set out to achieve the minimum of 6 credits, which was the mandatory for an excellent, so we had to do that. And that equates to an EPC score of 40, which is sort of just above what a standard building is. We'll sort of touch on that a little bit later. And the way that we did that, we said we were going to do that with no renewables at all, that we were going to do it with passive measures on the building, so we had an air permeability of 5, we had improved building fabrics, things like that, not only the building services, but the actual building fabric itself. One thing you need to notice with that as well is about the green guide rating, and that's where we were saying earlier about the credits bounce off each other. If you decide to throw in a load of extra insulation because you can get some cheaper stuff from elsewhere, if that's not the right insulation, you can be losing credits elsewhere. So it's always being conscious of robbing Peter to pay Paul, or how you're going to work it. Another point here, lighting controls are a lot cheaper and they're a lot better for the environment as well than putting PV, so it doesn't make sense to have just a standard lighting system with just a flick on the wall and then have a huge PV array. There's so many jobs, and particularly on schools that are getting built at the minute, where that's the case. If you can spend a little bit more money, there's some rooms within the prison where with daylight dimming, even just PIRs within store cupboards, things like that, they all contribute towards that EPC score of 40 to bringing it down within the models. Last one I'll just point out, within the lifts credit, there's a loophole, which is again where we sort of, it's not in the main section of it, within the sub-clauses, that each credit's probably got between 3 and 10 pages. I think it's on the 10th page, it says you can get an extra credit if you do 3 out of the most 4 energy saving things, and it gives you a list of things that you can do. And within that, if you look into it, there's LED lighting, so adding LED lighting to lifts, variable speed drives, and a standby mode. Then the 4th one was regenerative lifts, and we got the cost for, originally we thought we had to do all 4, and then so we've gone down the routes of all 4, because that's what it says earlier in the credit, and we've costed it up, and the regenerative, I think we put £6,000 on the two lifts, and we weighed it up and went, and then by really researching into the manual, we worked out that if you can justify that that's not the most, save the most energy, you can find there's a loophole within it, so it's worth really stressing that one, that you can make it work if you look into it. Still on the energy section, what we're going to talk about a lot at the end, the feasibility study. And we spent a lot of time at sort of stage 0 when we sat down before we thought about anything, was what we were going to do. And I think it probably is the biggest single capital expenditure on any job, tends to be your renewables choice. And quite often, on quite a few jobs we've gone to, day one someone sat down and gone, biomass, and we've gone, why? And they've gone, well, that's what we did on the last job. And we go, well, this isn't the same job, it's 300 miles north, it's in the middle of the city centre, and that one was out in a field in the middle of nowhere. It's worth spending time really getting the detailed feasibility study. We did it at the end, and BREEAM sort of recognised that without having a detailed BREEAM feasibility report, and ours I think it comes to about 90 pages in the end, just to tick all the boxes. BRE wanted to know what the noise impact was from the difference between having wind turbines and why we didn't select PV. And there's a lot of things that you have to tick, but they accepted what we did. So what the end solution, what we come for the living unit only, we ended up with biodiesel boilers. That was decided upon on that it was the cheapest capital expenditure. It ticked all the boxes we needed, and the end client was quite happy because they could pick up the potential for RHI and things like that, and they had contracts to get the biodiesel, but it was renewably sourced biodiesel. It was only derived from waste vegetable oil. It was a contract for all the waste vegetable oil from all the prisons that they've got, goes into a pot, as well as I think they had McDonald's, KFC, all people like that. So it was all derived from waste vegetable oil, turned into biodiesel, and was running that. That's what we ended up. But again, just sort of reiterating that spend time doing it. This is sort of where we ended up. The excellent on the score gets you the 6 credits that we said at the start. Is the excellent you have to get, and then you have to get the 10 for the outstanding. Our EPC, which is over there, was a score of 13, which puts it below the 18, which is there, it's a little bit awkward bouncing between two, which got us 13 credits. So that's a very sort of powerful section. And if that's, 15 credits worth 0.8, so that one sort of point within the BREEAM is worth 13.5% of the overall score. So it's worth making sure you get it right. Next section is transport. There's only 5 credits in this one, and so people quickly go, well, it's not really worth looking at. But if you look closer, it's got 1.6 weight in each, which means it's probably the most, well, it is the highest credit weighted. So it's worth making sure that your site's right. And it's quite often it's difficult because you've been told about a site that you've got to redevelop, so you can't do anything about the bus route, so you can't do anything about that. But it is worth weighing in mind if you've got if you're a developer and you're coming in and there's 2 sites and you can choose between them, they're exactly the same to purchase, it's worth being conscious of that it will make an effect on which one you choose on the BREEAM. One point within this, the travel information point, I don't know if you've seen them, but on a bus stop, what the BRE are driving at you to get with this credit is to have a bus stop with the LED lighting going across the next bus is in 3 minutes, the next is that. And we sort of spoke to Highways about the cost of putting one in it, and I think it was 15 grand that they come back with us, plus a standing charge for them to maintain it, and we were like, it doesn't make sense. The way that the BRE ended up settling was that we just put a PC in the reception where it's manned, and somebody could just go and check, and it was permanently set to the travel line or whatever the site was for the local bus routes. And for the sake of, I think it was £250 to put a computer there, we managed to pick that credit up, which is, when it's worth 1.6 at the overall score, it's a very cheap credit to pick up. And it's one of them where if you don't dig into the manual, you don't actually see. And it's worth asking them questions to the BRE.
Is it still switched on?
Yeah. I don't know if anyone's used it yet. Last point on this one, again, the cycle facilities is always one that people always go, why am I putting these bike sheds out the back? Nobody ever uses them. You need to make sure that you're really aware. For instance, for the prison, you think straight away, oh, so there's 900 inmates there, they're getting visitors, they're getting probably, say they get 600 visitors a day. I've got to give enough enough bike sheds for that amount of people. within the manual, it's only staff who you have to cater for. And then by talking to the end user, it told us that at one time he's only going to have 50 staff. And then if you're doing 10% of that, it's only 5 bike stops. So it's not huge. It's making sure you're aware of it rather than just going straight away. Bike sheds now, they're too expensive. It's actually look into what it is and what the cost you'd have to put in. Next one is the water section. I don't know why the thing is not on there, but this one's only worth 0.6% each credit. So don't get, a lot of people straight away, BREEAM, they think rainwater harvesting on the roof. The rainwater harvesting is worth next to nothing. I think it's 3 credits at 0.6, so it's 1.8%. But if you've seen 3 credits, you'd be 3 credits for, we weighed it up and the cost we got in, which I think what we were now, I think it was about £25,000 for the rainwater harvesting system. It just didn't stack up. So don't always think you have to do something because it sounds right for some BRE purposes. Look into it in detail. Again, sort of touched on it before, the metering. If you put the metering in the right place, you can save money effectively, which is what all the end clients want to do, but then with the leak detection credit, but then you can also pick up other things as well.